Hello dear students of second prep, let's go to start our episode today in the first episode in the second term as we have to study lesson 1. But firstly we should know how can we mention the lessons in this unit. We have unit 1 as we talk about the motion, especially as we have the periodic motion and wave motion. So we should know, لازم نعرف motion. Firstly, what is meant by motion? As we studied before in first prep, خدناها في أولى إعدادي. In first term, we have motion أو حركة. Motion is a change in the object's position as time passes. يعني change in the object's position as time passes. يعني تغيير الحركة أو تغيير الموضع. Change in the object's position as time passes أو through time unit يعني بمرور الزمن. But we have many types of motion, as we have transitional motion, as we have periodic motion. In first prep في أولى إعدادي we studied the transitional motion, الحركة الانتقالية يعني as we have motion of the train transitional motion as the object change its position as time passes according to or relative to another object بالنسبة لجسم تاني. But in second prep we will study specially the periodic motion. Firstly, what is meant by periodic motion? يعني ايه periodic motion؟ يعني ايه حركة دورية؟ Which means what? Periodic motion which is repeated بتتكرر as time passes. الحركة اللي بتتكرر بمرور الزمن. As we have, for example, the circular motion of the moon around the earth, motion of the earth around the sun, or motion of the rotary bee اللي هي النحلة اللي بنلفها كده. This motion considered as periodic motion. This motion is repeated, regularly repeated, تتكرر بانتظام as time passes أو at equal periods of time في فترات زمنية متساوية. As we have, for example, the earth rotates around the sun every 365 and quarter days. كل 365 يوم وربع. يبقى here we have motion which is repeated at equal periods of time أو as time passes. Okay. يبقى motion of rotary bee is considered as periodic motion because this motion is regularly repeated at equal periods of time. حركة بتتكرر بمرور الزمن. But we have here the oscillatory motion. Oscillatory motion which means as vibrational motion, حركة اهتزازية. What is meant by vibrational motion? يعني ايه حركة اهتزازية? Which means what? The body moves أو rotates around its rest point. يعني بمعنى ان الجسم بيتهز around its rest point. As the pendulum زي ما خدنا أو we know the simple pendulum اللي هو بندول الساعة has rest point like that. This point is the rest point. If we push the pendulum, it will move on the two sides of the rest point. هيتحرك على الجنبين بتوع the rest point. So here we have the oscillatory motion أو الحركة الاهتزازية. So we have periodic motion and we have oscillatory motion. Oscillatory motion is a kind from the periodic motion. يبقى we have periodic motion as a type of motion, نوع من أنواع الحركة is called the periodic motion. And this periodic motion which means what? Motion which is repeated regularly at equal periods of time. بتتكرر باستمرار. For example, the motion of rotary bee اللي هي نحلة بنحطها ونلفها كده اهوت. Rotary bee, this motion considered as periodic motion because this motion is regularly repeated at equal periods of time. On the other side, we have oscillatory motion. الاوسيلاتري موشن او الحركه الاهتزازيه is a kind from periodic motion. يبقى we have motion. One from the types of the motion is periodic motion. And we have oscillatory motion is a kind from periodic motion. يبقى نوع من انواع الحركه الدوريه اللي هي periodic motion. Okay. So we should know here the concept of periodic motion and the concept of oscillatory motion. The concept of oscillatory motion, motion of the objects on the two sides of its rest point أو its original point أو origin نقطة الأصل. So we have the common example as what? As the rotary as the pendulum اللي هو بندول الساعة البسيط we push it so it will move on the two sides of its rest point. So we want to calculate some physical quantities related to the oscillatory motion. As what? We have number one frequency اللي احنا بنسميه التردد frequency. Number two we have طبعا ال frequency وبعد كده عندنا ال periodic time is the two main concepts in the oscillatory motion. What is meant by frequency? Frequency اللي هو التردد هو number of complete oscillations عدد الاهتزازات الكاملة done in 1 second. So we have to calculate now the frequency. عايز احسب التردد اللي هو الفريكونسي. Frequency equal the number of oscillations عدد الاهتزازات تمام over the what the time passes. But here we should know the time or the measuring unit of time is what is second. We calculate time in what? In second, not in minute, not in hour. يعني in our curriculum في المنهج بتاعنا we calculate time by or using measuring unit is minute. Sorry, is second, not minute. يعني if we have a time in this problem or in the problem in the exam or in quiz as time in 2 minutes, so we should convert from minutes to seconds. يعني times what? times 60. يعني نعمل لها multiply 60 يعني 120 seconds. اوكي يبقى عرفنا ان في عندي حاجه اسمها frequency او التردد اللي هو number of complete oscillations او number of oscillations done in 1 second. يعني for example تعالوا نشوفها كده مع بعض على الورقه البسيطه دي كده. عندي حاجه اسمها الفريكونسي الفريكونسي as f معناها ايه؟ معناها number of oscillations done in 1 second. Okay, so we have frequency. So we have as the magic triangle here, we have 3 physical quantities. Number 1 we have f, frequency. We have number 2 number of oscillations. We have here t, which means time. But time in what? In seconds. Okay, طيب number of complete oscillation as for example يعني 5 complete oscillations. Here the time مثلا through 2 seconds. يبقى the measuring unit of time is second. What is the measuring unit of frequency? يعني for example here we have 5 over 2 equal 2.5. 2.5 what? الميجرنج يونت هتبقى ايه؟ 2.5 hertz. 2.5 hertz. The measuring unit of frequency is what is hertz. So we know now the measuring unit of time in our syllabus في المنهج عندنا is second. And the measuring unit of frequency is hertz. Okay? يبقى احنا عرفنا يعني ايه frequency as a new concept or new term in our syllabus as اللي هو scientific term جديد اللي هو number of oscillations done in in 1 second. اوكي؟ اوكي. طيب يبقى we now know dear students how can we deal with periodic motion. يعني ايه؟ عرفنا يعني ايه حركة periodic motion. Motion which is repeated regularly بتتكرر بانتظام أو repeated regularly at equal periods of time في فترات زمنية متساوية. And we have many examples about the periodic motion as motion of rotary bee, as the motion of moon around the earth, motion of the earth around the sun, motion of the simple pendulum. Simple pendulum is a periodic motion. But if we want to mention or recognize the concept of what? Of the oscillatory motion. Oscillatory motion which means what? Motion on the two sides of rest point. الحركة على جنبين the rest point. مثلا for example wave الموجة. Wave like that. We have rest points and this wave will move upward and downward. تحرك لأعلى والأسفل. يبقى هنا the motion on the two sides of rest point. And we know how can we mention the frequency or we calculate the frequency. Frequency is the number of oscillations done in 1 second. Okay. طيب we have another concept. عندنا مفهوم تاني as amplitude. As what? Amplitude. Amplitude يعني ايه؟ يعني we have simple pendulum like that. Like that. This is the rest point or the origin point. The simple pendulum move to this point. Then it will return back again. So the maximum displacement أقصى displacement اللي هي أقصى بالعربي إزاحة أو نعتبرها مسافة طبعا هي مش بالظبط قوي. Maximum displacement away from rest point is called amplitude. The maximum displacement away from rest point is called amplitude. يعني for example لو جينا نشتغل هنا على ال simple pendulum for example اهو نرسم simple pendulum. This is a simple pendulum. We'll move from point A to point B like that. So it covers displacement from here to from this point to this point as what? As 4 centimeter. So here we want to know the amplitude. يعني ايه amplitude? Amplitude which means the maximum displacement away from the rest point or from the origin point. Here this is the point and the body moves from A to B. As we have displacement here equal 4 centimeter, so we have the to recognize how we calculate now the amplitude. يبقى amplitude is the maximum displacement away from rest point. يبقى أنا عرفت دلوقتي يعني إيه amplitude is the maximum displacement away from rest point. أقصى مسافة أو إزاحة بالعربي away from the rest point. يبقى we know now what is meant by amplitude and we know what is meant by frequency. يعني إيه تردد ويعني إيه amplitude. The measuring unit of frequency is what? Is hertz or Hz. طبعا we have kilohertz as 1000 hertz and so on, but not now. Later we will study the measuring units of frequency. So now, dear students, we know how can we deal with, again هقولهم تاني. Motion يعني حركة. Motion, which means what? Is change أو object change its position، بيغير مكانه as time passes، بمرور الوقت. As this object in this position now, after 2 seconds will change its position from this point to this point. So we have here motion. And we have many types of motions, as we have transitional motion and periodic motion. But in this year, we will study the periodic motion. Periodic motion. Periodic motion, which means motion which is repeated regularly as time passes. بتتكرر بانتظام. عشان كده سميتها periodic motion. As motion of rotary bee, as motion of moon around the earth, as motion of simple pendulum. But we have another type of motion from the periodic motion. هيقول لي periodic motion as oscillatory motion and as what? As wave motion. What is meant by oscillatory motion؟ يعني ايه oscillatory motion؟ oscillatory motion يعني حركة جسم بيهتز. طبعا the common oscillatory أو the example أو the common example of oscillatory motion is the simple pendulum. Why? Because the simple pendulum اللي هو البندول ده بتاع الساعة moves on the two sides of the rest point أو the origin point. بيتحرك على جنبين النقطة الأصلية اللي هو كان واقف فيها. طيب we have another concept as we have frequency. يعني إيه frequency؟ frequency which means what? frequency يعني تردد. يقول لك the frequency of this channel، تردد القناة دي مثلا for example يعني 2500 hertz for example. يبقى what is meant by frequency؟ يعني ايه تردد؟ يبقى number of oscillations done in 1 second. So we have frequency equal number of oscillations أو number of complete oscillations over time. Time in what? In second. يبقى we know now the measuring unit of time is a second. Not minute, not hour. طيب at the same time we have another concept. عندنا حاجة مهمة جدا. We have amplitude. طبعا frequency, the first time to know this scientific term, to study this scientific term, and at the same time it's first time to study amplitude. Amplitude معناها maximum displacement of the oscillatory أو the oscillating object away from its rest point. يبقى maximum displacement away from the rest point of the object. أبعد نقطة عن الايه rest point بيوصل لغاية كده. as for example يعني swing المرجيحة. swing is an oscillatory motion. Why? Because the object moves on the two sides of the rest point. The kids تمام use the swing المرجيحة move from origin point toward this point. The maximum displacement here أقصى إزاحة أو مسافة away from the origin position is called amplitude. For example 3 meters مثلا. Then return back. So يعني كده احنا يعني I think يعني and I hope you know the main concepts in the unit 1, especially the first point. طبعا we know what is meant by motion, what is meant by periodic motion, what is meant by oscillatory motion, what is meant by frequency, and what is meant by amplitude. Okay, dear students, I hope you can understand completely what are we studied in this episode. Thank you. I hope you join me in the next episode, inshallah. Thank you, see you, and goodbye.